Hello and welcome to any of you who are joining. Please give me a little, some sort of sign, whether you can hear me all right or not. And as always, I not only invite but highly encourage all interactions. Hello to those of you who are joining. And again, please let me know if I need to speak up or if, somehow the sound is not clear. But yes, again, always, I really encourage all interaction. So I'm always really interested in your any questions that you have or any comments that you have, your own personal shares. All of that is welcome. I really invite and enjoy the dialogue. So I'll just start us off here with a little topic and we'll see where we go from there. I've been having both people asking questions and then just for me some percolating around like what were some of the key pieces. There's kind of the key constructs when I did my own no man diet, and then what were some of the key takeaways. And I don't want to spend a bunch of time talking about what is a no man diet because it's also somewhat unique to each woman, and frankly could certainly be used by men as well, but my only experience is myself and other women. So I'm going to talk about it from that perspective, not because that's the only way to use it. But just to give a little bit of background, I mean, it's definitely in the realm of choosing a period of time when like dating and sex and relationships are taken off the table and in service of creating something else. So I would say typically, certainly where I came to choose this from, and then women that I've worked with or other women I know or I've guided through this, that it often comes from a place of, there might be some frustration around like, why don't I have the man in my life that I want? I hear a lot of, why do I keep attracting the same type of man? Or also sort of a chronically having the same kind of relationship or some similar sticking point. And so anyway, this choice. So again, I could talk a lot just about what it is, and maybe we'll do that at a different time. But there were really two pieces that I wanted to talk about today, and they're applicable somewhat across the board to a no man diet or life in general. But this is a particular kind of perspective to look at them from. So again, welcome to those of you who had joined since I started, and always lovely to see your little names pop up. And I always welcome comments, questions, shares, any place that I could be more clear, please bring all those to the conversation. So this actually came up because I was talking to, I'm always curious when I get the angry faces. I'm like, was that an accident or is someone actually angry at me? I can't tell. I always see the little like hearts and flowers and smiley faces go across and they feel really good. And then every once in a while there's an angry face. And I'm like, what's up with that? So I was talking to a couple of women yesterday, and we were talking about we were talking partly specifically about my no man diet, and we were talking about it as a concept in general. And partly because actually I'm right now putting together a program around this to specifically take women through this process. And so I was talking to a couple of women to support me around that. And one of the pieces that I realized in having that conversation was that a huge piece of what I got out of this, and also where I see there being a tension point in the work that women do around kind of like this point of frustration, if you will, is that there's that I see women who are on kind of what I would call like one side of the spectrum, where they're like, oh my God, I really, really want a relationship. I just want to be in a relationship. Like, what can I do to make that happen? That it's like a really strong focus point. And often I'll say, frankly, a lot of the women that I know actually feel some shame about that. You know, we're kind of accomplished women in our own right, and we think like, I shouldn't need a partner, shouldn't need a man, but then I do. Like, then there's this other part of me that actually does really, really want, like, I feel really needy, and so there's like the needy part, and then there's the part that's judging the needy part, and then I also see, you know, and I think we all maybe do these at different times. It's not necessarily like you are a woman who's one way or the other, but like there's moments of different parts coming through. But there's another piece that I see a lot, which is the like, I don't need a partner. I'm all good on my own. You know, I got this handle and I don't need anybody. And what I've really come to see both in myself, and then again, I'm sort of speaking, I think these are also human, but I'm speaking at it from the perspective specifically of women right now, is that those are actually stemming from the same place. And that the part that gets projected as like, I'm whole and complete and unto myself and I don't need a man, and is often stemming from the same place actually internally as the part that goes like, oh my God, like something's wrong and I'm broken and I need a man to fix it. And so then the push away from that is more the reaction, but they're actually often stemming from the same place. So there's this really, and it's even tricky for me to talk about, like there's something that's so subtle about this particular kind of work, which is allowing, it's actually, so I've been calling this state a little bit more, I call it sacred sovereignty. And the reason I call it that is that when I believe for a woman in true sovereignty, there is a place where it's like, actually, I am okay. But that includes any part of me that's needy, or any moment that I feel needy. Like what I would call true sovereignty or sacred sovereignty is settled enough in myself that I'm actually solid enough to allow myself to feel the parts of me that also are, we could call them needy or even just longing. That I feel still safe inside my own skin to feel longing. And that might be longing actually for a partner. And there might even be, you know, it might be like, oh God, I really do actually long for that. I want it so much. Like there might even be like deep, deep parts. There's all the layers, right? There might be surface parts that are like, I just want someone to come and like handle everything for me. Or I think my life would be better. Or I'm afraid my life is broken. Or there's something wrong with me if I don't have a partner. And in what I would call, again, like sacred sovereignty, which I really believe that this work, that's like the, I don't want to use the word goal. It's the movement. It's like, that's what the movement is towards this place that I would call sacred sovereignty. And in that space, I actually have enough room inside myself for the parts that are needy, for the parts that feel broken, for the parts that are longing to be met emotionally, longing for physical contact, longing to be held, longing to be taken care of, that actually all those parts can exist when I feel whole enough. And what I found is that putting myself, and also with the women that I work with in this kind of a process, is that actually taking that kind of space where I know that dating is going to be off limits, that having sex is off limits, that getting romantically involved or into partnership is off limits, that it actually allows the space to feel all of that without acting on it. So it's really different than pretending that I'm not needy and going like, I'm fine and I've got this handled and I can, get myself off and I can make my own money, and where there's actually a pushing away in that. All those things might be true. I can make my own money. I can take care of the kids. I can get myself off. And I might also feel a deep longing. And that creating that kind of space around myself where I wasn't dating and I was intentionally engaging much more with my women friends than my men friends, where I wasn't having sex, like all very intentionally, like set inside a container, it actually allowed the space for the deep, deep longings to arise without acting on them. So I see a lot of times the work, it's almost like in the places where we feel needy, then there's often a desire, or what comes out on top is to find a way to not feel needy. And so I'm inviting something different here, which is rather than either pushing that away or putting something on top of it, or basically trying to fix the feeling of neediness or helplessness or longing, is creating a structure inside which all of that can be felt. So again, there have been a number of people who've joined since I started, and please continue to feel free to bring your questions, just jump into the conversation. Frankly, I mean, not only do I invite that, but it's my favorite. My favorite is when there's a dialogue going on. So any questions, any comments, your own personal shares are all really welcome. So that's a little piece on this, where I think there's often a pull, or it's looked at like it's like opposites of being needy, or kind of like landing in this place of that wholeness is like, I don't need anybody. And I'm talking about something that actually encompasses both of those. Thanks, Andy. I appreciate you being here and your comment as well. So one of the other pieces that really that came up for me when I was talking about this yesterday, in the creation of I'm putting together a container to actually take women through the process of a no man diet. And I'll just say a moment about why I would even do that, which is that, of course, like anyone can go do this on their own. You can put yourself on limits. You can, maybe you have girlfriends who can be your accountability. Maybe, there's lots of ways that you could do this for yourself. And I would say, I don't know if he's still here, but Craig jumped on at one point, but he was my coach during that time. And while I chose this for myself, and then I was the one holding it, I brought it into our coaching. And frankly, I don't know what I would have done if I didn't have, a coach, a mentor, a really strong support system, girlfriends that I was leaning on who are also in their own right, powerful mentors, leaders, and coaches, because taking this process on for myself was some of the deepest work that I've done in my life. And that's coming from a woman who lived for years at a Buddhist monastery and, has really gone into some deep personal growth work, that this kind of ongoing work, it took me to some really, really deep places in myself. And so I encourage anyone who wants to take this on to do so inside of some sort of container. And so one of the ways that could be is that I'm creating a container to actually walk women through the steps, both of what are you, it's called the no man diet. So it's like, what are you not doing? But also looking at so what are you then both doing in the physical sense, but what are you moving towards? Why would you even take this on in the first place? And to create a community of support and a container to hold women inside of. I just want to check, because Randy had a comment here. How can we best hold space for the space you're holding? how do you communicate this process of dieting? I have so many women friends, soul sisters, conscious explorers, and peers who go through these seasons, and I'm curious about the entry, re-entry, exit process and whether you're partnered or not during these times. God, there's a lot in there. So I'm going to speak to some of it just a little bit. And one piece I'll say is that I have seen a differentiation for women where, in our life, all people, certainly all people, but I'm going to speak to women here, that we just go through in our life cycles of being in partnership or not being in partnership, dating, sex, or not dating and sex. And then that there is also a difference in really creating a container for yourself and taking it on consciously. And so the kind of support you would offer if a woman is like, man, I'm just in kind of like, I just ended up in a fallow period, might be different than a woman who's saying like, this is this conscious choice I want to make for 1 month, 3 months, 6 months. And I see, it looks like both of the people asking this question are men. And frankly, I would turn her towards her women. Some of the best support I got from men during my no man diet was to turn towards women. One of the things that came up for me, it's always tangents. The tangents always get me on these lives, but was my own habit of reaching out towards men for support and kind of looking, then again for the masculine validation. And so one of the things that could be there is, one is really holding your own energy back, right? Because that's our intention when we set ourselves into times like this, is like, okay, I'm taking this space. And, I found for myself, I basically see anyone who's ever taken on this practice, that all we do the whole time is find all the ways that we are still looking for that validation, whether it's from the feminine or from the masculine, from men or from women. But one of the things we can do is not make that harder for whoever's doing it. So that's one little drop in the bucket for what you're speaking to, and also looking at the differentiation between sort of finding oneself in a fallow time, like seasonally, or consciously really taking on and setting a container. So I generally work with people who are single and going through this process. I think that the actual pieces of it are applicable to people who are partnered. And again, I'll respond to this in reference to women, that this is all applicable to women who are in partnership. But the way that I've done it and the way that I've really held women through it has mostly been women who are single. So I would say, to the question whether you're partnered or not during these times, I would say no. I'm sure that there are ways to create it, because it can be created uniquely for any woman, that do involve partnership. I'm partnered now. I was not partnered when I entered, and then I, took this very intentional 6 months, and I didn't date. I didn't have sex. I was not romantically involved or partnered. And then it was interesting on the re-entry, maybe it's just an awareness more than something you can do intentionally, is that I caught myself, and I've seen this for other people go through this too, which is like, I finished my 6 months, and literally 4 days later, I was like, why the fuck haven't I had sex yet? Like, what is the problem here? And it was a beautiful moment to be like, wow, like there are those same parts of myself coming up, and just how to work with them. So I hope that answers some of your questions. And if you have other specific ones that come up in response, like, feel free to bring them. But I also want to just go into this second piece that I wanted to touch on. And some of these just may need to live as kind of like a series. Like, I did another Facebook Live about my no man diet as well. And it's such an all-encompassing process. It's so deep, and there's so many facets that it's like I just literally can't touch on all of them in one session. And so in this one, I really wanted to talk about kind of like the way to hold both this idea of being needy and then where there often seems like it's either being needy or like, I don't need anyone. And then what's actually the space in between that holds both, that allows for all that feeling without either grasping and like actually acting on it, right? Those are the moments when we, drunk dial somebody, or we go on a date we don't really want to go on because we're just like, oh, I just want something. But how to also have all of those feelings without acting on them, and then without doing the kind of reflexive response of pushing away and like, I don't need anyone, but rather still having the need or the longing, feeling all those feelings, creating space for all those feelings without the reaction one way or the other. And then, Robert was saying that you've also taken these. Absolutely. I mean, frankly, this actually originated for me from taking men through a no woman diet. So it can go either way. I'm just talking about it from the woman's perspective. So the other part is, certainly there are women who are aware consciously that they're putting a lot of attention towards either getting or keeping a man. And some of that is at the level of like, what do I need to, like, how do I need to look, all the things I need to do to keep myself up so that I can get the right man or keep the right man, or some of it's at that level. Some of it's at the level of like going, on dating websites, going out. Sometimes maybe you enjoy that. I also talk to a lot of women who are like, man, like I hate this, but I have to do it in order to get a man. So there's like this energy, this effort that's being put out. I hate clubs, but that's where the men are. I mean, I hear it from men too, again, but I'm mostly just talking from a woman's perspective here. Or sometimes, again, it's actually the personal growth, right? Like, oh, I'm going to take this course that's going to teach me how to do the thing so that I can then be the right kind of woman to attract the right kind of man into the right kind of relationship, or I have to do all these things so I can get the right man. So that's a certain level of like conscious activity, or where it might be taking your time or your attention, or even just going on dates, right? Like I definitely talk to women who are like, oh my God, it's like, it's taking so much time just even to be dating. And all of this, like there's a whole bunch of things I could address in this about how you're actually relating to those things that makes them either like work or a burden, or can make them just joy. But frankly, where a lot of that came from in myself was taking the time for a no man diet. And then I was able to come back and be like, oh, I know how to now bring the joy to this experience in a way where before I was getting caught in habit ways of relating. And so what a lot of times this does is create the space to see our habits more clearly, in order to either create new habits, make different choices, or choose those habits but consciously be like, oh yeah, I like doing it that way, rather than I have to, it's the only way to do it, or I'm stuck in this, or I'm caught, or I didn't even know I was doing it. I just thought that was like the way it happened. I didn't even know I was doing it. So, but what I've also seen is that there's often, it's like it literally feels like a hamster wheel. Or sometimes when I'm working with a woman or talking with her, it's like I can see it and hear it going in the back. That's some little part that's like, is this the one? Are you the one? Is that the one? Could this be the one? What about this one? Should I do this? And so in addition to the places where you might be able to notice like, wow, I sure could free up a lot of time and attention and energy in this way, there's also the unconscious hamster wheel that's looking for like, can I get my hit, my man hit? Can I get the man to say, like, approve of me? Or maybe he's the one, or is he's going to say that ultimately some of it are those pieces that I was talking about. Like, are you the man for me? Are you the one for me? Are you my partner? Are you the father of my child? Unconscious in the back. And some of it, this is like the deeper level. And this, again, this is actually where this applies, whether you're in partnership or not, but is this place where I think as women, men probably have some correlation, but I'll speak to this perspective as a woman, that there can be a place where we're looking for like for our very existence to be validated by the masculine gaze and reflection. And I say masculine on purpose, not just men, but the masculine, like we're using our success at work to validate our existence, or we're using a man saying yes, or we're using that there's something about being validated by like the masculine to make it so that our very existence is validated. And that's kind of heavy stuff. And it's one of the places where I see, and to say this is, I'm not shaming this or saying it's like I would say this is a very natural response to then go like, well, I don't want to need anybody. Like, then I don't need anybody. I don't need that masculine validation. And what I want to work with here is the place where it doesn't have to be a pushing away or a separation. Like again, earlier I was talking about, it's what I call sacred sovereignty. It's true. I truly believe it's holy, and that in that space is where we're truly permeable, and we actually do need other people. And even the things we can do alone, sometimes we want other people there with us, and we long for certain kinds of connection, and simultaneously allowing ourselves to actually be free of it's like the addiction to having our very existence validated by men and by the masculine. You see, Mark said, oh, thank you. But you also said, you make me want to go on a man ban, even though I'm in a relationship, and get those benefits. Yeah. Well, it's funny you bring that in, because I was, this is the place where I have to just slow myself down, because yesterday when I was having this conversation about like actually creating and putting this program into the world, I was like, oh, this is totally for gay men, and this is for lesbian women, and this is for women in partnership, and this is for, and I was like, okay, I have to focus a little bit, but the fundamental pieces are, they're universal, and there's just different ways of kind of coming at them. And so this is one way, and it's a way that I found to be incredibly deep, kind of like, it was like a ninja. It's like, I had no idea when I made my commitment to myself, how deep it was going to go, and like the parts of me that was going to touch. So today I just wanted to bring in like a couple of the pieces, and maybe more than anything to spark the conversation. So I want to give a few minutes here before I close out. Both, I want to check and see that I didn't miss any comments, and anyone who's here and you had either a comment or a question, but you've been waiting, or maybe you think you're going to look silly if you ask, like, bring it now. And again, these can be shares from your own life, or a place where I wasn't clear enough, or maybe just a question to take it deeper. But I'd love to have a little conversation here at the end about the topic at large, and also maybe these two specific pieces, and one being around like the being needy parts of ourselves versus the like, I don't need anything parts. And then this second piece, which is around freeing up that part of ourselves that's putting so much time and attention and energy into like the trying to get or keep partner, both consciously and unconsciously. And frankly, the conscious and explicit parts are really interesting to me, and the more interesting conversation is like the hamster wheel inside of us that's like, needs that to happen or needs it to stay. And so any last comments or questions, I really welcome that. And I'll close out this conversation for the day and come back to it another time. I'm just double checking to see if I missed anything earlier on. A couple people just saying that they appreciate the conversation, which I'm glad. I'm glad to have the conversation and get it out there. Here it is again. Someone just gave me an angry face. Who are you? Why are you angry at me? Well, I'll say for any of you who are here live, I appreciate you being here live and being part of the conversation. And for any of you who are watching the replay, again, I really invite your comments. I invite your questions. I'm happy to come back later and have more of like a written conversation and respond to anything that may or may not have been clear. Or any place where you're saying, like, how does this apply to this particular experience in my life? I love those questions. The ones where there's actually something specific that's up and you're wondering how to apply this. So please feel free to bring those. And again, thanks to any of you who are here with me live. I always appreciate your time and attention. And I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful day. Ciao.